Hello, Paideia Scholars. Mr. Chambers, your outdoor education coordinator, coming here from Biosphere 2 down near Tucson, Arizona, or Oracle, Arizona. This is a research facility where back in the 70s, they wanted to see if scientists could rebuild and create artificial rainforests, oceans, and savannas within this greenhouse structure. And the first group of scientists lived here for about 2 years inside the facility, growing their own food and harvesting their own food, living inside the research facility. They had to add in more oxygen because the soils that they used for their artificial rainforests and savannas had a lot of microbes that were reducing the oxygen content in here. Another group of scientists came in here to live for about 6 months, and after the 2.5 years that scientists lived here, this became an educational research property for visitors to come and see. So in this video, I'll be walking around and showing you some of the things here at Biosphere 2. And remember, they grew all their own food here in the sustainable greenhouse, and maybe that's something that we as Paideia Scholars can. So come along with me into Biosphere 2 as we enjoy the wonders of science. So the first part of the tour had me going through and walking through to see where the Biospherians lived, how they had apartments in there, a library, and a kitchen. Most of those displays were off limits for me to go to, and as fascinating as the human element is, there's a lot more fascination behind all the science and research that's going on here. Currently behind me, we have one of the 3 domes for the Landscape Evolution Observatory. And this is a more recent project, not one that the Biospherians, the people who lived in the biosphere, did, but one that U of A is currently working on to understand how water flows down the mountains to the valleys to give us fresh water. And here in the Landscape Evolution Observatory, there's no plants growing right now, but eventually they do want to get to that point to see how the roots and insects and microbes and fungi that are attracted to plants, how those impact the water quality from a fresh rainfall. So inside there's a artificial rain system, and they'll rain down water, and it runs downhill at about a 10-degree angle, and they try to measure the quality of the water as it falls from the rain and as they collect it at the bottom. And so the 3 different ones, they've got slightly different terrain in each of the observatories so that they can measure different mountain qualities and how the water tastes and what chemicals or any runoff come with the water as it flows downhill. So So beyond growing an agricultural wonderland where they could live off the food they grew and simulate some artificial environments that we have yet to get here, the Biospherians, knowing that they had to live in here and that they wanted it to be a living, breathing, multi-ecosystem representation of Earth, had to consider some serious things, such as energy and cooling, to make sure that it was cooled to the way where they would not overheat and that they had enough energy to power air conditioners and so forth to keep it livable, not only for the humans inside the biosphere, but all the plants and animals as well. They also had to take into consideration oxygen. With all the plants that are inside, it creates a lot of oxygen, and that oxygen expands in the summer heat or contracts in the winter. And so they have these artificial lungs behind me, these big geodesic domes. And in there, it expands and contracts and helps regulate all the oxygen in there so that the scientists, the plants, and the animals could breathe healthy while in here. So big projects like this take a lot of consideration when it comes to energy, water, and oxygen. All important things that we as scholars can look at as we explore our own biomes in and around Paideia. Where's our energy coming from? Where's our water coming from? How's our oxygen and air quality? Is it getting better over time? Things these scientists are considering, and things scientists all across the world are considering, and helping to keep us alive and healthy and to have a sustainable Earth. So first section that we are entering in is a desert biome. I call this a coastal fog desert. Not like the Sonoran Desert that's just outside of the biosphere, but this is to simulate the vegetation found in Baja California, off the coast of the Pacific Ocean. And so while it will be a desert and have limited rainfall, the coastal winds that bring in and out the salt water from the sea creates this rich, lush vegetation, unlike what we have on a normal year in our deserts. There are still cacti and a few other familiar plants that we would see, but it also has a lot more humidity from the artificial salt water being pumped in from the ocean to create this coastal fog desert. Here's some more examples of that rich vegetation growing in the coastal desert area. There's still some cacti and some yucca, but other varieties of trees as well. They also do a really good job of having all these little signs at each tree telling us what the tree is, what family it belongs to, and gives us a little QR code to help us go to a website and identify more about those trees. Eventually, at the Paideia Whole Person Sanctuary, we'll be adding our own QR code so we can learn about the trees in and around Paideia. Passing through the Savannah area. This is select vegetation to help decrease the humidity from the rainforest that we're about to enter into the desert coastal fog where I started. But before I go into the rainforest, take a look down at the artificial ocean. You see a few boats out there that researchers will use to go out to select data points for their various experiments that they are still actively conducting in partnership with University of Arizona. So that concludes the tour through the rainforest, the ocean, the savanna, and the desert bog. Desert climates that they artificially created inside the Biosphere 2. I'm walking on my way outside past the rainforest, where you just see the massive overgrowth of these trees that have climbed all the way to the top over the last 30-40 years since they were planted. We even have in this window here some familiar looking fruit. These ripe green bananas, or maybe they're plantains, growing on this bunch, have probably been part of a tree system that's been growing for longer than your parents have been alive. So it's quite a fascinating tour. If you ever get a chance, come on down here to Biosphere 2 and give it a try if you're very curious in nature. But there are things from this brief expedition that I did that I certainly want to incorporate into our Paideia outdoor learning about all the biomes in Earth, experiencing and looking and examining the plants that we see, taking into consideration the energy, the water, the oxygen and air quality that goes behind it, and truly thinking about how to be self-sustainable as Paideia Academy and to live off the food we grow. So thinking about these ideas, how does this apply to Paideia and our outdoor learning spaces? So thank you for coming along with me on this brief tour of Biosphere 2.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. This has been brought to you by Paideia Academy and the Take It Outside initiative and the Paideia Whole Person Sanctuary, presenting the edible ecosystem. Our mission is to naturally nourish the body, mind, heart, and spirit through growth, curiosity, connection, and discovery in the Paideia community. If you would like to help Paideia Academy's Take It Outside, you can visit paideiaacademy.com/donate to help contribute to keep the edible ecosystem, the whole person sanctuary, and all Paideia scholars going outside with their academics.